Right, 3, 2, 1. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Be More Dog Live with Debbie Connolly. Debbie, thank you for joining me today.
No problem. Hello, everybody.
So what we're going to be talking about today is dangerous dogs. We've got about an hour. So anybody watching, if you have any questions, just type them in the comments box and we'll read through the questions as we go along. I might pause halfway through just to run a little competition that I do, giving away a free 1 hour session. If anyone, Bubbles, can you just send me a message and let me know that you can hear me okay, please? That would be great. Okay, let's get started. Debbie, thanks again for joining today. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and also what constitutes a dangerous dog, please.
Okay, I'm Debbie Connolly. As you heard, I'm an experienced dog behaviourist. I've also done a bit of everything, run kennels, run my own rescue. For the last approximately 6 years, I've been an expert witness, which means I've been assessing dogs involved in bite cases, dogs who've bitten or who've threatened to bite or injured somebody. And that is, these days, the bulk of my work. As we speak, I think I've got 19 ongoing cases. I've done my last assessment, hopefully, barring another bite, yesterday, and I'm back in court and start again on the 4th of January. So an expert is somebody that independently assesses a dog, produces a compliant report under criminal procedure rules, and often you have to go to court and argue that evidence and prove to the court that what you've said is correct, that you are an expert, and decisions are then made about the future of dogs involved in that work. I still do some private work. I have dogs. I do some cat behaviour as well. And the definition of is a dog dangerous is huge, and we can explore that. So if you've got questions about anything to do with the law, I've done these talks for dog walkers, for rescues, for all sorts of people, and there are a lot of common misconceptions about how the law works. So if you've got some questions or examples, or you're the victim of a dog incident, please come and join us, and please come and ask some questions.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. So I'm actually going to start off with a question, if that's all right.
Okay.
I've been reading through the handout that you gave me, which was really interesting. So thanks for that. So you mentioned about what determines a banned breed, and you made reference to movements. So can you explain what that means, please?
There are 4 dogs prohibited under the Dangerous Dogs Act. We've all heard the Pitbull Terrier, you've got the Dogo Argentino, Fila Brasileiro, and the Japanese Tosa. And the important definition here is the word type. It's not, is this dog a Pitbull? It is it type? And that was because of a definition a few years after the law was brought in, and it talked about how you define a dog that doesn't have a pedigree. They're not recognised as a breed in this country. So the definition, we'll use Pitbull because most people are familiar with that and the word. Type means the dog has to have, and this is a quote from the law, a substantial number of the characteristics of a Pitbull Terrier, and they use the American Dog Breeders Association standard in order to define that. So there's about 60 odd points in total. So to be a banned breed, and for the court to say it and for the police to allege it, a dog has to look a bit like one. It doesn't have to be one. It doesn't have to have been bred from one. There's no DNA testing. The only definition is because of measurements. So a series of measurements are done on the dog to see how close it is to that definition in the standard, how much bigger the head is or wider than the chest, what's the back length compared to the length of leg. There's lots of comparisons, but some of it is a little bit subjective. So there's a definition in there that says the dog has to have a light, springy gait. Now, that's quite subjective. But if the dog's a bit flat-footed, no, it hasn't. That could be because the feet are too long, which then is outside the standard. A pump handle tail. There's something to do with loins as well. I think it's powerful or something. So there's a number of quite ridiculous definitions in terms of they're not measurements. And the measurements are really comparisons against other parts of the dog, not you have to have a leg this long or a chest this wide. So defining a banned breed, if we use the Pitbull Terrier as an example, is a specialist job. It's the job in the police of the police dog legislation officer who will have done some training, shadowed another DLO and done further training after that before becoming one. And they are the police definition. They say, we've measured it, we've seen it move, this is what we think. If we then look at an independent expert coming in those cases, that's usually for the defence, but not always. And an independent expert, myself and colleagues like me, would be involved in measuring the dog and videoing it and deciding if we agree with that definition. Does that definition fit our version of it? And you can see with some of the subjective parts of it, it can be quite an argument in court. So if the police say it is, and an independent expert comes along and says, no, it's not enough for me, it's not enough points, or the measurements are, some of the measurements are outside what I would accept, then it goes to court and there's an argument. So the dog, there's no DNA test, there's no version of, oh, well, I've got some papers. We have a lot of people who buy things like American Bulldogs and similar, and they do have a certain amount of paperwork from an international kennel club. It doesn't make any difference. Doesn't matter what piece of paper you have in your hand. If the dog looks like one and measures as one, it will go to court for the court to say if it is one.
So that's really interesting. And I'll be honest, I didn't know that. I thought it was just quite specific to the 4 banned breeds. So what you've said there really makes it a lot broader. Yeah, and a lot more open to sort of discussion, really. Yeah, and I didn't realise it could be that way. That and that brings me on to another question that I've got. Yeah, is for people like myself and trainers and other behaviourists, or anyone, I suppose, dog walkers, anybody who suspects that they might be, dealing with a dog that could be one of the banned breeds, or possibility that it's been bred from one of the banned breeds. Where does that leave people like us, like professionals? What sort of advice would you give to us in this situation?
Yeah, this is a good point. If you suspect that you own or a client owns a dog that could be a banned breed, you're not an expert. It's not for you to say yes it is or no it isn't. That's not your job. The challenge is normally made by the police because they see it, or sadly, quite often it's to do with a neighbour or a friend who reports the dog, quite often because there's a hidden agenda between them, but not always. So these dogs generally come to the attention of the police, and that's the starting point. There are people who would rather know. I've had this happen quite recently. Somebody messaged me saying, look, I bought this dog. It's now 6 months old. I'm concerned because people are saying it looks like Pitbull. I had a quick look at the pictures. It did look a bit tight. And I referred that on to one of my ex-police colleagues to go and measure and have a look at the dog himself to see whether or not he thought he did that as a proper job in the police for many years. So I asked him to deal with it and go and see if the dog was or wasn't. In our opinion, well, in his opinion, I should say, I was the able sparkling leotard assistant on that job. He felt it wasn't. And when some of the pictures are misleading, and it's why you shouldn't be judging like that. There were some of the pictures that the dog did look quite Pitbull type, and a couple it didn't. And in reality, when you saw the whole dog, I wasn't surprised to discover it didn't measure up with enough points. But so people can and have approached the police themselves and said, look at my dog, I'd rather know now. I would rather know. Other people simply go through life with their dogs and just wait to see if anything happens. And I think the reality is, there's probably lots of dogs who probably would have typed, but they've never come to anybody's attention and nobody's ever realised that they could be banned. So the majority, yes, you can approach your local police force. People are a bit mistrustful of that, so experts often get approached first. But in reality, it's because the dog's come to attention, because it's bitten somebody or somebody's reported it, or a neighbour or friend thinks they're living next door to a pit bull and they get concerned and tell the police, and then the police come round and have a look for themselves. So if you suspect that you have one, it's your choice whether to try and find out now, or you simply carry on living your normal dog life and see if anybody ever comes up to you and says, I'm a police officer, that could be a Pitbull.
Okay. If anybody's just joined and you've got any questions, please type them in the comments box, and we'll work through them. So we're talking about dangerous dogs. Now, Debbie, I think a lot of people have got an opinion or an impression that a dangerous dog is, the savage banned breeds. But of course, it covers a lot more than that, doesn't it? It covers
It does.
So do you want to talk about, the kind of innocent behaviour that could potentially have a dog seized that people might not be aware of?
This is where I would like to kill social media. Everybody's an expert on there, apparently. Excuse me. It is important that people understand the law does not say bite. And everybody thinks, well, the dog just jumped up and scratched them. That's not an offence. It is. The dog ran at them and barked them and might have frightened them but didn't actually touch them. That's not an offence. It is. So it's important to establish the law says injury, not bite. I've had a case where an English Bull Terrier, admittedly the guy had been told off by the park warden several times for a rather boisterous dog. The dog meant well, it's a nice dog, but it jumped up at an old lady and she fell over and broke her arm. So he hadn't fixed in the 6 months of warnings the fact that the dog was out of control. And eventually it did injure somebody. And the fact that it had jumped up, she'd fallen over and broke her arm, did not stop it being an offence. The dog was, in law, dangerously out of control and caused an injury, and it went to court. So because of the owner's utter stupidity, that dog's now on a muzzle and lead order and has its life restricted somewhat, but probably didn't need to happen. So it's important to define the law says injury. If your dog injures somebody, you've committed an offence. But if your dog behaves, and again, this is a quote, if there is reasonable apprehension of injury, and those two words are what the law actually says. If you have reasonable apprehension of injury, then the owner or the person in charge of that dog has committed the offence. That takes me to one other important point. Who gets prosecuted? Prosecution is done on the person in charge of the dog at the time or the owner of the dog, and sometimes both. So if you are a professional dog walker or just a family friend or somebody who's looking after somebody else's dog and you walk it occasionally for them, if an offence is committed, you're the one in charge, you're the one prosecuted. There are a couple of professional dog walkers this year who were involved in some discussions who both thought, well, I don't want it to happen and I'm going to be really careful and it's not going to happen. But the end result's going to be, if anything happens, the owner will get prosecuted. It's their dog. That's not what happens. So the person for the time being in charge or the owner of the dog or both can be prosecuted for an offence. And it is an offence to cause reasonable apprehension of injury, not just to injure somebody.
Yeah. And that's pretty massive, isn't it? I think that that affects all of us. That affects anybody that's out with the dog, and it affects people that own Cane Corsos and Dobermans right the way through to Cockapoos. We've all got. Well,
it is, and I remember sometimes you see posts on Facebook where somebody has said, "Oh, this German Shepherd's just been seized. My dog's a Labrador. It's just been seized." And inevitably, somewhere there's a couple of comments where they say, "Well, that's not a banned breed. Why have they seized that?" Yep. The police can seize if an offence is committed. So it doesn't matter what breed or size your dog is. And I have dealt with a couple of quite small ones who've caused injury, as well as the big lads as well. If the dog commits, if the dog injures somebody, then the owner or the person in charge has committed an offence, and the police may want to seize that dog. It is not just a question of they're only seizing the banned breeds, and people need to be clear about that, because that's a very common misapprehension on Facebook.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. So we've got a question from Rachel Clift. Hi, Rachel. She says, is it possible to go through the exemption process without having the dog spending time in police kennels? If people go to the police because they think they have a pit bull, will that help to allow the dog to remain in the home?
Thank you, Rachel. That's a really, really good question. Yes, there are quite a few dogs who were never seized or were seized for a couple of days and returned to their owners. An exemption was completed. There is a process that in law is called the Interim Exemption Scheme, IES. And that is granted to dogs by the police at their discretion. So the dog remains at home until the court date. Yes, it's possible. Now, if you own a breed that you think might be challenged one day, or there might be a problem, and you want to do everything that you can, the dog must be neutered, microchipped up to date, and have public liability insurance. I'll come back to that in a minute. So if your dog is well trained, well mannered, friendly, sociable, neutered, chipped, and is insured, and you are ever challenged or you want to approach the police, you stand a chance of getting the dog back on IES. Occasionally, they're not seized at all. I've certainly been involved with, it's not many. I mean, I'm one expert, probably 2 or 3 a year, where the dog isn't even seized because everything is already in place. And the person says, actually, I have been wondering, I did think it might be a Pitbull type dog. And the police have been happy that the owner is a fit and proper person, because that's a crucial point as well. You know, if you've got convictions for dog bites or welfare issues with animals, you may not be considered fit and proper. And you just simply wouldn't get your dog back at all. So, yes, it is possible to have a dog not seized if everything's already in place. It is also possible that a dog would be seized briefly in order to check out the rest of the information. When the dog comes back on IES, or if IES is awarded, you are accepting and signing. You've already accepted that dog is a banned breed. That's an important point. You can't do it as a way of keeping your dog at home and then say, oh, hang on a minute, I've decided it's not now. That's not how that works. But some people put their hands up straight away. They've been wondering themselves, you know, other people have been saying it. Yes, it's possible. There's quite a lot of stuff on Facebook that alleges that certain forces never do it at all. I mean, I've worked up and down the country between Cumbria and Sussex, and every force does do it. Some, yes, more easily than others, and some are a bit more suspicious and do it very rarely. But yes, it's possible.
Okay, thank you. We've got another question here from Jessica. Hi, Jessica. She says, I always have a declaration on my dog walking contact forms, getting the owners to agree that their dog is not listed on the Dangerous Dogs Act, etc. But I know it's ultimately my responsibility if anything happens whilst walking dogs. So I'm going to show that question. So yeah, Jessica's a dog walker. She does a lot of dog walking. I wonder, like, how many dog walkers actually know this, and also how many dog walkers and professionals have got contracts, you know, and what should we be putting in those contracts, Debbie?
Well, there is a post on my blog about this, about all of the things that that dog walkers. I must say here that there's a newish organisation called the Professional Dog Walkers Association, and I am their expert advisor. I've done quite a few talks for them. There's a post on my Safe Pets blog that covers the sort of criteria you should have in your contract. Now, there is certainly, it's possibly a good idea to have in your contract that the person is not aware and does not believe that their dog is one of the prohibited breeds. That's really as far as you can go, because that could change next week or the week after, because a police officer sees it and thinks, hang on a minute, I might need to measure that. So it's only valid at the point that it's been said. And I know dog walkers who walk dogs that have been through the exemption process and take them out with the other dogs. They just can't let them off the lead, and they can't keep them without a muzzle on. So it doesn't stop other people taking them on and walking them professionally or otherwise. That's not how it works. They're just more restricted in what they can and can't do with them in public. That's all. But there is a post on my blog, and it does. There's quite a lot to take into account for contracts. It's one of the reasons I wrote it. Absolutely, you should be insured yourself if you are a dog walker. You should have, at the very least, public liability. I recommend that people have a cover for care, custody, and control of animals as well, of dogs, because let's say you lost a client's dog. how are you going to pay to replace it? I'm not trying to talk about dogs like it's a pair of shoes or a handbag, because absolutely they're not. But there can be other issues. What if it's a show dog and it has an injury while you're out with it that puts an end to its show career? I've seen that happen. So you might want to look at care, custody and control of dogs on your insurance as well. But your contracts generally need to cover what sort of equipment is used on that dog and what the owner says you can and can't use, whether the dog can be let off the lead and in what circumstances, whether it can be mixed with other dogs, whether it can be transported with other dogs. You need to cover yourselves, and the owner needs to be satisfied that every aspect of that is covered. And should something change, it might be a puppy and it gets older and gets better trained, and at some point it starts with don't let it off the lead, and that changes. Get it in writing. Cover yourself. Make sure that if the owner says to you, actually, now I'm happy with this, that you get that in writing and signed. So absolutely, at the very least, public liability insurance. Consider care, custody and control of dogs as an addition, and get every single thing in writing. There is a blog on my, a post on my Safe Pets blog that covers a probably longer list than that of all the bits and pieces that I've recommended that you consider adding into your contract. Okay, thank you, Debbie. If you've just joined the show and you've got any questions for Debbie, then type them in the comments box, please. Rachel Clift says, thank you for such a comprehensive answer. No problem, Rachel. And Jessica, thank you for your questions. So regarding rescue dogs and people that have recently rescued a dog, is there any guidance you can give on liability? If, say, for example, the dogs come from a rescue centre, the person's got the dog, they're not really fully informed about any aggression. Is there anything that you can advise on that? Is there kind of like a liability period or anything? No, there isn't. And I recommend that you are very, very careful where you adopt your dogs from, because I've dealt with numerous cases in 6 years, several this year alone, where a dog has come from a rescue. Sometimes it's years later, but in a few it's relatively recent. And the rescues claim to have assessed it. Don't get me wrong, I work with some good rescues out there who do properly assess dogs, and everything they do is in writing. A qualified behaviourist sees the dogs, there's a report or recommendations that's handed to the new owner. But the fact remains, the moment that you take custody of that dog, you're liable. And if it turns out the dog's aggressive with other dogs and you weren't told, and that results in legal action, still your fault. I have to say, I have some strong feelings about this, because there are some completely dreadful, incompetent, sadly lying rescues out there who pass on dogs they know are bitten before, who pass on dogs with problems. There are some fantastic ones who honestly do an amazing job of checking out the new owners, the dogs, everything's done properly, but a lot are not doing that. And the results are often hidden. Because, strictly speaking, they're not liable in principle, because the law says the person in charge. You can go to court and say, look, I've only had that dog a month and I did let it off the lead because I didn't think it was a problem. It's been okay with dogs. They told me it was okay with dogs. Don't care. You will still be convicted of an offence if the person is injured. And yes, the court will hear how long you've had the dog. But let's say, for example, you've had a dog a month, it seems okay, and you let it off the lead and it causes some kind of criminal offence under that act. It is not a defence to say, I haven't had it long and the rescue didn't tell me. Anybody should know that even if the dog has come through kennels or been in a foster home, it's yours now. And your dynamic and your behaviour with the dog can change that behaviour. So my general rule is don't let the dog off the lead for at least 3 months. Take it out yourself on the lead, take it to places, have a look yourself. Because the way the dog reacts for you could be different to how it was reacting when you saw it in a kennel or in a foster home where it had settled more. Be cautious, be vigilant, be careful. But the end result will be, if you commit an offence because you're in charge of the dog, whilst you can tell the court that the rescue did not disclose something to you that they knew, and you can prove that, you still committed the offence through your choices. So there's a couple of things that come to my mind. Like, firstly, the importance to have insurance, and secondly,
it's not a bad idea to get an independent behaviourist around, somebody that specialises in aggression, who can come and do an assessment for you. So at least
in terms of the law, yeah, I mean, in terms of the law, yes, it is. But, you know, there are some good ones out there who will give you some recommendations made by their behaviourist, the person working with them that has seen the dog. So some of them are more comprehensively tested, but be cautious. You know, the dog doesn't know you. You shouldn't be letting it off the lead too quickly. You shouldn't take for granted that the dog's good with kids because it was good with the kids in a foster home. You need to use some common sense. You're responsible and the dog is living in your house, so please use some common sense. I think it's a good idea sometimes to have your own home assessment with a local behaviourist after you've adopted a dog and see if they can see anything different to what was seen before.
Yeah.
Some of these dogs have been in rescue a long time. They do know everything about them. And if a professional's had a look, then that's a better bet than, you know, something that's appeared in rescue quite recently and sometimes even has bitten or caused a problem. And you just, please just use some common sense. That's the main thing.
Yeah, it's better to be safe than sorry, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely it is, yeah.
Okay, so we've got a question from Kirsty. I don't know how you want to approach this, but Kirsty's saying, do you think all aggressive dogs can be rehabilitated?
Hi, Kirsty. That's a good question. I mean, can all of them? Definitively, probably not. I think as we've learned more. I mean, I've done this 30 years. If you look at the things we knew then and the things we've learned since, I think there's a lot more success in rehabilitation now. And a dog aggressive in a moment is not necessarily going to be aggressive in that moment again, because the moment might be what I call the perfect storm, you know, of factors that come together in that one moment that caused a bite. I think to say that every single dog could be successfully rehabilitated is probably dangerous in itself. But the fact is, as we learn more about behaviour, as we study more, as we try it, I've done it. You know, I've worked with dogs who've killed other dogs, who've bitten children, who've done some terrible things, and I've worked with them. Some I've rehabilitated entirely on my own. So yes, it can be done, but can it be done with every single dog that ever shows any aggression? Probably not.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. So we've got a question from Mark Riley. Can Debbie explain why it's important third-party insurance is taken out by all dog owners and what that does for them? Thank you.
Hello, Mark Riley. Thank you for your support this evening. Very good question, of course. Public liability insurance is actually quite cheap. We're not talking about health insurance. We are talking about public liability. And you can get that by joining the Dogs Trust as a member, because a free perk of that is your dogs are covered for public liability. So for £25 a year membership, you also get public liability insurance. And I mean, Mark and I've discussed this before. I think it's a very valuable thing to have. If your dog, for example, got out of your house and ran across the road and caused a car accident because somebody swerved to avoid it, how are you going to pay for that? Public liability is not just about dogs who bite. It can be, you know, somebody trips over your dog lead in the street when you're walking. Somebody falls over your dog because they didn't see it. I mean, probably have to be quite small for that, but it covers all eventualities where there could be injury to a person. So public liability covers a lot more than dog bite. And it is for £25 a year, it's absolutely worth having. Absolutely worth having. Because you can cover the compensation paid to a victim, but you can also cover things like a car that swerves and crashes, or, you know, somebody that trips over your dog lead because you're tied it to a chair in a pub. Somebody trips over your dog in a pub because it's lying next to you. It covers all of that as well. It's a very valuable tool that means that people who deserve it get compensation for what's happened.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Debbie. A question from Kirsty again. What's your thoughts on the amount of dogs being brought over from Europe? This is a good one. It seems a lot of legal rescues are transporting more and more dogs over and don't seem to have very much aftercare support in place. Are you seeing a lot of these dogs in court situations?
Yes, just a simple answer. I've posted about this on my business page. I'm I think, as a general rule, if somebody wants to adopt a dog from abroad, they have every right to make that choice. The problem that we have in this country is too many of these dogs come over with no backup at all. And the rescues in this country are picking up the tab for that in every sense. I would say this year, and we've had lockdown, you would think that it would be less. I've had more inquiries this year than usual, and I believe this year I've had an increase in the number of dogs who've been imported from abroad who've then bitten somebody, either in the home. Not all of these cases come to court. I just want to clarify that. I give advice to people for free who've had an incident. Not all of these cases end up in court. But my personal experience this year is I'm seeing a lot more incidents caused by dogs who've come from abroad. You know, these dogs are... I've dealt, I won't name them, but I've dealt directly with 2 rescues this year who I've given quite a lecture to. I call them rescues. These are people sending dogs from abroad, and one admitted she did not have any backup in this country, that she thought, well, you know, the end result would be the dog would be fine because it's been in foster, it's come over, it's been handed over in a car park somewhere, which I just, you know, that whole thing annoys me no end. There are 1 or 2 who seem to be bringing the dogs in. They go into a foster or a kennel situation for a while, and they stay there, and they're then further assessed. And only at that point are they put up for adoption. But the thing that bothers me, and I would imagine is why Kirsty asked the question, because she's probably bothered by it, that my problem is, yes, I'm seeing more of them in bite situations, that they were placed in homes that were just not prepared at all for a dog with few social skills, is very nervous. And I think the thing that is the icing on the cake is every single day there are posts about dogs being handed over that ran away very quickly. That had them a day, a week, 3 days, and the dog's already escaped from the garden or run off on a walk just to let it off the lead, or escaped at the services and is never seen again. There seems to be a huge amount of these dogs who escape very quickly. Some are caught, some aren't. The other thing that bothers me is how many have come in, and then British rescues have had to pick up the tab and literally take on the dog because the rescue can't or won't take the dog back. And do you really want to ship it back abroad? There should be proper backup in this country. I'm told that 2 or 3 do have that. For me, proper backup is there is a behaviourist available that should the dog fail in its home, and the reality with a lot of dogs, even if you've adopted them from this country, some of them just aren't suitable. They just don't fit. So what happens to them? You should have money and the ability to put the dog in straight in kennels if there's a problem, have it further assessed, have a behaviourist in this country that can speak to them, and have the ability to maintain that dog for its whole life in the same way that a good rescue in this country would. Sadly, there's a lot that are not doing that. And I don't like it. I wish we could do more about it. Yes, it's come up in a number of my court cases this year.
Okay, so just on that subject then, Debbie, could you just give a few pointers that you would say to people that are getting a rescue from overseas? What would be your, say, top 5 tips, maybe about what to do?
Right. I think this is a good point. If you go to my Facebook business page, which is My Dog Has Bitten, there are 3 graphic handouts on there that you can just look at and copy to your own machine. One of them is about adopting a dog from abroad. Check out the rescue. Ask if the dog has been assessed and by whom, and ask for a copy of that. Ask what actual support there is in this country. Ask what emergency numbers if there was a problem. Who do you contact? What's this dog been through? And who do you contact if things start to go wrong? Who can you speak to? Contact a local behaviourist and have them ready. I've also put some advice on there about treating stress. These dogs are inevitably stressed. They're coming from abroad on a van. They've got a long journey. They're coming to meet unknown people quite often. They've never seen them before. And they're frightened. And that's one of the reasons they escape and run away so quickly. So my handout also covers preparation, using sprays and items that help stress, and assuming the dog will arrive stressed, and being ready to deal with that and help the dog transition more quickly. So if you want the full one, if you go to My Dog Is Bitten on Facebook, you can download the graphics for that specific subject. There's 3. There's one about there's one about preparing your dog to live with children. There's one about adopting from abroad, and there's a general one about the law itself. You can just copy those. They are done as a photograph. You can copy them. If you want me to send them, contact me, message me on my page, and I will happily send you a copy to your email if you prefer. But look at the history and ask questions. If they say, oh yeah, don't worry, there's somebody in the UK that will help, who is it? What's the person's name? What's the person's phone number? If they're claiming that the dog has been assessed, what's it been assessed for, and who actually assessed it? Has it simply just been in a foster or a kennels for weeks on end, settled down and seemed fine, and they're going to call that an assessment? And unfortunately, that seems to be about the quality of it with a lot of them. So ask the questions.
That's really, really excellent advice. Thank you, Debbie. And I've got your Facebook page running along the bottom of the screen. And after this, I'm going to put up all links to everything as well. Thank you. That was really, really great answer. We've got a question from Paul Maloney. Hi, Paul. He says, I have an aggressive Doberman, mainly due to being attacked twice. I have had him assessed by a qualified behaviourist from our vet. He is never off the lead and is exercised on a long line. The problem I have is other dogs off lead running up to him. He has bitten other dogs who ran up to him even though he was barking and going nuts. Is the other dog owner at fault, or are there other implications? So that's a really good question, Paul.
Paul, this is a great question. And I get asked this week in, week out, who's to blame? There's no definitive answer, but let's say, for example, you're exercising your dog, he's on a long line, and you have him under control, and let's say at that point he's not muzzled. And another dog comes up, you try to reel your dog in or call it back, the other dog persists and ends up getting bitten by your dog. Dog on dog only, with no person injured or threatened, is a civil offence. I'll come back to the other issue, but I just want to look at the law for a minute. It's dog on dog is a civil offence, and the police won't deal with it. They become involved if a person is injured, which unfortunately can happen. Quite a few of my cases are to do with one dog's attacked another, and the dog that's being attacked, the owner gets involved or moves their dog or lifts it up and gets bitten because the attacking dog wants to get to that dog. If it's dog on dog only, it is a civil offence. The dog warden would deal with it. People seem to be very reluctant to tell the dog warden, oh, well, I've done it before and nothing gets done. Please report it. I can tell you that one of the things that happens in a prolific offender is the police eventually can get involved if there's several incidents. And the first thing they do is go and speak to the dog warden and see what supporting evidence they can get. And that is something that happens in quite a few cases, and I get very frustrated when I've seen a particular dog mentioned more than once and the person's not reporting it, nobody's reporting it, and eventually if that case comes to court, we have very little supporting evidence to force the owner to do something about it. So first of all, please report everything, even if you think your dog warden's not being very helpful. Report it, it's important. Secondly, it's a civil offence if it's dog on dog. If the owner of the other dog, if their dog is out of control, if it runs over to you and you are in a sensible place and you're not too close to where they are, if their dog becomes injured, which is horrible and nobody wants this to happen, but if it happens, then they may try to claim their vet bills from you. Now, I've seen that attempted several times through the civil court as a small claim, effectively, to try and get the vet bills back, but it's rarely been successful. Everyone's got a slightly different dynamic in that scenario, but I used to own an extremely aggressive German Shepherd, rejected from the police at 3 because if you sent him off to go and catch a criminal and he saw a dog on the way, he'd divert and attack that instead. I got him when he was nearly 3. He lived till he was 10. He never touched a person or a dog after I got him in his whole lifetime. I did a lot of training with him. He was off the lead in certain circumstances because I could drop him, and if he was down and I was marching towards him looking very assertive and trying not to look terrified, on one occasion a Westie was circling him like a shark, barking and trying to nip him, and fair play to him, I walked across the grass. I was well off the path, well out of the way, hand up, down, got there, spragged the Westie myself, and went and told the owners off. And he so wanted to hurt it, but he didn't. yes, you can achieve a level of training where you can recall your dog. The only thing I would say is probably at least attempt to recall the dog in that scenario, Paul, so that you can be seen to be getting your dog away from the other dog. But the fact remains that if other dogs are running up, and having been there and owned a very aggressive dog on 2 occasions, I've owned dogs who were inherently dog aggressive. They never did anything, but it was a lot of work to make sure that didn't happen. So I feel your pain when you are muzzling and using a long run and acting absolutely responsibly. But if somebody else's dog is coming charging over to yours, my advice is at least try and recall your dog. I know it's difficult because some of them will just be already switched off, but at least make that attempt to get your dog back to you so that you can attempt to get between the 2 dogs and send the other dog away. I've been known to stand in parks and shout and swear at other dogs and try to send them back to owners. And if I hear the words, "It's okay, he's friendly" once more, I may have to hurt somebody. It's the biggest thing that we hear. The dog's running over, often with its tail up and all its teeth showing, and there's some idiot behind it shouting, "It's all right, he's friendly." Yeah, mine's not. Mine will kill yours. Please call your dog back. Yeah. I do feel your pain. You're obviously being responsible already, and you know your dog's limitations. And unfortunately, if you live with a dog like that, and I have on at least 2 occasions, I know it's hard work. But a dog-on-dog incident only is not dealt with by the police, because it is entirely a civil offence, and you sometimes just have to stand up to these people and say, well, you know, your dog ran over here. Again, there's some slight variations in that, but I shouted you, I asked you to call your dog back, you didn't or you couldn't, and I'm sorry that your dog's been injured, but mine is under control here. It's an argument that sometimes carries on for a while because every scenario is slightly different to every other one.
Thanks, Debbie. I think that's probably very common.
It's sadly, yes, been there.
Yeah, and very frustrating. I hope that helps you, Paul. So we've got another question from Kirsty. She says, "Thanks for those answers. I totally agree. The anxiety levels in nearly all of them I've met are through the roof. It seems to be a running theme for them. It's really sad, which isn't going to help the situation as well either."
Absolutely. As I said, I'm with you on this, Kirsty. Having to go into court and I've numerous times over the years, but certainly more this year, I've had to give the background, of what happened and where the dog came from, and it's alarming. We've all seen it. Those of us who are members of certain groups on Facebook, we see the mess that's created, and the next time that there is, which there's probably been more today. The next time there's another post, "Oh, well, it arrived in the country 2 days ago and it was in the back garden and it escaped." What's wrong with these people? Why aren't they being given advice? These dogs should be kept on a lead, even in the garden, for some time afterwards. The sheet that's available on my, infographic rather, that's available on my page does talk about the minimum levels for that. So please go there and download that if that's going to help you. Share it. It's been shared so many times. Of the 3 of them, I think that's the one that's been shared the most, because everybody is seeing this. Professionals, dog walkers, owners, people who run good rescues. We're all infuriated by the very poor quality that is evident in the idea of importing and rehoming. Somebody wants to import a dog, that's their business. But these rescues, in my opinion, have a responsibility to ensure that there is proper backup that they pay for in this country. It is not the job of UK rescues to pick up the pieces of those messes.
Thank you, Debbie.
Just my opinion. I'll get off my soapbox for a minute.
John Jessup says, "Is a dog on lead that is acting very aggressively still considered to be under control?"
Well, that's a really good question. Without injury, the offence is the non-aggravated version. So let's say that there's a person across the road with a dog. It's on a lead. It's going berserk. It looks like it might bite you, but it doesn't, because the person battles it past and carries on down the street. Depending on how bad that was, there could have been the lesser offence committed, that you feared you could be injured, that there was reasonable apprehension of injury. And in theory, you could report it. In reality, the police have plenty of things to do and don't particularly like getting involved in this unless there's a number of reports. And I have had a couple of cases in court in the last year or so that where the dog had not bitten a person at all, but was a prolific offender of either being let off the lead and getting involved with fights with other dogs, or threatening people. One of them I remember was a Doberman. And the owner's attitude was, well, it hasn't bitten anybody, it's fine. But it was a large dog. He's not a very large man. And if I saw him battling and struggling with this dog, which he had absolutely no control, proper control. Essentially, the dog was tied to his wrist and he had 2 leads. It wasn't something that put you in the frame of mind that dog was under control. And you know, it is something that you would look at and think, if he drops that lead, that dog's going to kill me. So it's a very difficult thing to answer, because they're all, every scenario is slightly different. But just being on a lead does not stop you committing an offence. That's the first thing. I mean, plenty of dogs on leads have bitten people. A dog that is persistently behaving in an aggressive fashion has to be essentially fitting the definition of reasonable apprehension of injury. You know, has the person ever lost control of it? Do they look as if they're going to? We're back to, I'm afraid, he said, she said, subjective decisions there. But I've seen a couple of prolific offenders that genuinely could not control their dogs. I've seen them in court without a bite at all.
Okay. Thank you, Debbie. Next question is from Rachel Clift. If a person has an aggressive dog which is bitten, are they liable if they don't muzzle it? So they already know it's got aggressive tendencies, or is it just keeping it on a lead enough?
That's a good question, because that's happened plenty of times. Rachel, it's a really good question again, thanks. Unless something happens, that's not really going to be tested, because an order would have to be put on the dog to force it to be muzzled for the person to be committing any sort of offence. So let's say, for example, you know, this dog gets into a fight. The dog gets into a fight, say, with other dogs, and the dog warden comes along. They can give a sort of local, technically voluntary, I think, order, saying, I'm telling you, it would be a good idea if you muzzled and put that dog on a lead. But the eventual test has to be whether an order can be put on the dog. And then there has to be usually been an offence for that. Sadly, somebody has to have been bitten, or a prolific dog attacker. Should it come that the person can be proven, let's look at the civil aspect. So let's say that you've seen a dog in the park that is always at the end of the lead trying to kill other dogs. A couple of times it's got away from the owner and sadly had a couple of fights. The owner keeps getting told, muzzle your dog, you've got a problem, deal with it, and doesn't. And eventually, let's say for argument's sake, there's enough incident for the police to want to take it up, or sadly a person is injured in trying to save their dog. The fact that there's a history is relevant. It's relevant in law, and this is why the police go and check the dog warden. It's why, as experts, we ask the question. And if a person is interviewed under caution, one of the questions they ask is, has your dog ever been aggressive before? Has it ever bitten before? So a dog with a history, should there be, let's say you are fed up with this person and it attacks your dog and they've never taken sufficient steps, and there's other people who've had the same thing happen, and you decide to make a civil claim against that person for your own pain and suffering and for the vet bills, let's say. The fact that that person knew that the dog was aggressive, and there's proof of that, proof's always important, it is absolutely something that has to be taken into account by a court. The difficulty is, if it hasn't got to the point that, say, the police have written an order that the person has signed, because the police can deal with certain things with a voluntary order. It could be like an ASBO type or a voluntary control order. So an ABC, an acceptable behaviour contract. There's 3 or 4 different versions that can make the police, without going to court, put an order on the dog. Now, technically, they're all voluntary, and they play their part only if there's an offence that comes before the court. But it's absolute definitive proof that the person has been warned. They've had advice. They've been told to muzzle or keep the dog on a lead. And breaching it in itself is not that. It's not really something that can be actioned. But if there's a further offence or a series of offences, the fact they've already signed something is important. So tell your dog wardens, because they can produce a version of that. And in some cases where there's been perhaps a minor injury, the police will produce a version of it and the person has to sign it. And then you've got proof going forward. If they keep breaching it, if it's a voluntary order, it's not really actionable. But it becomes really important, and has in numerous cases, if the person ignores it and carries on making the same sort of mistake.
So I suppose just, another reason why reporting things to the dog warden is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does every borough have a dog warden? Are they everywhere?
I've heard this recently. I was talking to somebody last week who said, no, we don't have a dog warden. Yeah, you do, because that's the law. They have to provide, every council has to provide dog warden services. The thing is, it used to be always somebody employed by the council. That still does exist, but councils can subcontract it. Sometimes you get the pest controller has got the stray dogs to deal with. Not the best idea, but I know for a fact that still exists in a couple of boroughs. So there is always a dog warden, there has to be, but they can subcontract it, and a lot do. Some subcontract it to local kennels who are very experienced, and they take the role on, and they get provided with vans and equipment, and they go and collect the stray dogs and deal with them, and they deal with some of the rest. There is a company who people will be cringing now, and I think it's Animal Wardens Limited, who have quite a long history of complaints, and I believe they are the company that is the most contracted by councils nationally, and I've certainly seen lots of complaints online about them. So yes, there is one. The quality of it could be anything, to be honest, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Una says the amount of dogs coming over who should not be home to first-time pet homes is actually worrying. Yeah, I would agree with that. First-time dog owners taking on a problem dog, it's a tricky combination, isn't it?
It is. The question is, did they know it was a problem dog? I've seen some interesting write-ups, let's say, by some of these Facebook groups dealing with some of these dogs. And I agree. A lot of these dogs are coming from, perhaps living on the street, and they're fearful of humans because they've only ever been chased by them. They never lived in a house as a puppy. They weren't imprinted on lovely humans playing with them and giving them food. And this is why a thorough assessment of the new home and of the dog is so important. And the number of these dogs that get passed on, I mean, there seems to be an increasing number for sale on Gumtree and places like that. And, they put these dogs come over from wherever, Romania, Eastern Europe somewhere. And it's very alarming how many of these dogs are being sold on, abandoned, lost. The microchips aren't updated. That's another thing that's on my handout. That if I was somebody running a rescue abroad and sending a dog to another country, the moment I knew that dog had reached this country, I'd be contacting Petlog. I'd be getting that chip in the name of me or the new owner. I'd be making absolutely certain that it was registered in the country that it's landed in. The number of times we see chips not registered, foreign chip on this dog, dogs just arrived, escaped. My experience, and maybe some people won't agree with this, but my experience particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, is there's more of it. There's more dogs coming over. There are more problems. There are more escapes. There are more chips not sorted. I would say if you have the right to import a dog you've seen on the internet, that's your right. But please check the rescue out. Ask the questions. Get the phone numbers. Get the addresses of the people here in this country that are going to back you up if something goes wrong. And the moment, this is on my sheet, the moment that dog is in this country, contact Petlog and get that microchip properly registered.
Thank you, Debbie. John Blackman says, I've missed most of this. It's being recorded. Yes, it's being recorded and it will be on my page afterwards. Colin Spence agrees. He's a behaviourist. John Jessup, conditions to rehome a dog from most UK organisations are so restrictive, so people go to an overseas market. It's big money, and ultimately that's what it's about. And also, in my experience, I think people want to get from overseas rescues because what I've been told, all they see in the UK rescues is staffies. So I think that's another reason why people are looking overseas.
I think these are important points, and I agree. You see those comments. I don't agree that it's just staffies up for rescue. I've seen anything and everything. I know there's a feeling that some rescues are overly prohibitive, and I probably agree with that to a point. Some of those rules are there for a reason. You know, if you've got a dog, let's say it's come out of the dog pound, there's no history on it, it does it 7 days, it's passed to a decent rescue, it spends a while there, but it's been kennelled. Different people have handled it, it seems sociable, it seems fine with other dogs. You still cannot guarantee that dog's going to be okay with children unless you're in a position to test that. So some of them do rotate dogs into different foster homes in order to take that a bit further with somebody more experienced, but a lot can't. I would agree that I've certainly seen some slightly ridiculous versions of who can and can't adopt a dog, but first, there are lots of rescues out there who take the person and the dog and make a decision, and do not automatically stop you if you've got kids under 5 or 10 or other dogs, or your dogs aren't neutered. There are reasons why the rules exist. Please respect them. It's for safety. Nobody wants to make a mistake, but that does happen. But there are rescues out there who will look more laterally and a lot more open-mindedly at the dog and the circumstances being offered. Yes, it might take you a bit more work to find them, accept that, but they are out there.
That's good to know, Debbie. Thank you. John Carini. Hi, John. Hi, Debbie. This is all really interesting and great information and guidance. Thank you. I see many examples of dogs barking and lunging at gates and railings where a child could put their hands through. Where does the law stand on this type of situation? Whether anything has happened or there's a potential of an accident. So that, I guess, is on somebody's private property.
Yeah, the law does apply to private and public property and has since 2014. Prior to that, it was only public. We used to have to argue about whether the dog had stepped over the boundary of the property. That's not relevant anymore. Since 2014, it's anywhere, any place. So I have had quite a few cases in my career where exactly what John's just described has happened. A child's come along, an adult in some cases has leaned over the fence, or the dog's been lolling over the fence, and somebody's put their hand through, somebody's petted the dog, and the dog's bitten them. It's an offence. It is a criminal offence to have that happen. So if you've got a dog in those circumstances, please do something about your fencing, because it is not a defence to say the person put their hand through. It's not a defence to say, well, the dog was barking, they should have known. Not a defence. You've still committed a criminal offence. So I think it's important, and I'm very conscious. I've got 5 dogs. One's enormous. There's also a Belgian Malinois and a German Shepherd and 2 small ones. So I'm conscious of this, particularly because I have bigger guarding breeds. And one of those is a retired security dog. So, you know, I'm talking about dogs who certainly look the part and would bark quite aggressively to some people. They'd think that. So the law is clear. You've committed an offence. Essentially, the law expects you to protect people from your dog. So if you've got fencing that somebody could put their hand through and does and gets bitten, it's still an offence. If the dog lolls over and is lovely with most people, but one day somebody does something stupid to the dog and pokes it or shouts at it or is wearing something the dog doesn't like and gets bitten, still an offence. I saw an absolutely awful video that made me cringe 2 or 3 months ago. It's somebody who owns a Japanese Akita. And if you imagine a large grass area with sort of a semicircle of houses around it on an estate somewhere, and there's a small child's play area. I mean, there's just a few swings, and I think there's a roundabout, and there's lots of teens and kids just playing around there. And this woman put this video up proudly of her Akita that's allowed out of her house to run around that area with those young people. Some are running and screaming. The dog's quite young at the moment. Some are running and screaming. The dog's chasing after them. Some of the kids are terrified. It was the biggest accident waiting to happen I've ever seen. And the people that criticised and said, that's really not sensible. You know, one of those kids that is going to panic and kick that dog because they're frightened of it. Something could happen. No, but she wasn't having any of it. I fully expect at some point that dog may bite somebody, and we'll be seeing the whole thing in court, and that video will be shown if that's the dog.
Yeah.
I just watched that, incredulous at the stupidity that somebody would simply let their dog out and be laughing from their house while it ran around chasing children. You know, the kids could make a mistake. One of the teens could kick it. And if that dog injures somebody, and it was jumping up at quite a few people as well, it's easy to scratch somebody. It's easy for a kid to panic. It's a big growing dog. And I despair of that. But yes, John, it's a great question. The fact is, you've broken the law if somebody can get their fingers in and your dog bites them.
Thank you, Debbie. Kirsty says, I agree. If it was all about the dogs, they should be raising money for neutering programs to reduce numbers. £300 rehoming fee and shipping over 6 at a time in most cases.
Yes, completely agree. You know, what's ethical rescue? Well, that's on my blog as well. Dogs properly assessed, proper backup in place, lifetime backup, neutered, sorted, everything that could be done beforehand. And I agree with Kirsty. I've seen some quite frightening amounts in adoption donations, or whatever they want to call them. Oh, you're paying the shipping, you're paying this. And the animal arrives, you know, it's got to be passported. So in theory, if it's been vaccinated legally, that's been done. But I've seen quite a few come over not neutered, and the person's expected to go and do that after they've sometimes paid, as Kirsty rightly says, a few £100s. So where's the money going? You know, it's not right. It is right. And, you know, I don't want to lump them all together, but it is an issue, yes.
Una says, John Jessup, many of the international rescues are so questionable. The trouble is that general pet owners have had their heartstrings pulled and don't understand how to check out a good rescue. Well, hopefully from this, you know, people can sort of see your handouts and read the information that you're giving. They'll be a bit more equipped on how to deal with it.
I would hope so. That's why I wrote that particular one. And as I said, it's available freely on the My Dog Is Bitten page. I can send it to you if you've got it. You mentioned the handout I provided earlier. Thanks for that. I did a talk using PowerPoint, very fancy, for an organisation, and what I did was I put on some paper my contact details, a graphic relevant to that, and then what I put on was essentially the wording from the slides that I'd use, which are fine to act as prompts for some of the points that have been made today. At the end of that, there's a couple of links that you can go and follow to look at the law and a couple of other things as well. I've given Patricia that handout. It's available through her if you want it. It'll just give you some prompts and reminders and some further research you can do on this topic if you want to.
Thank you, Debbie. A question from Eddie. Eddie says, can people use Gopro video when out walking with a Pitbull type dog or any dog? And using the courts for evidence if that shows innocence of dogs, please? That's a good question. Thank you, Eddie.
It is a good question, and I've not long had a case that involves some video taken on a mobile phone. Yes, it can be used. If it's used by either side, it has to go through the normal criminal procedure rules, which means it's checked and it's given to the other side. Both sides have to see the evidence in a case. But can it be used? Yes. Has it been used? Yes. And not, as I said, not just the GoPro, but also mobile phone evidence has been used, photographs have been used. One other thing on that, Facebook posts have also been used. I've seen the owners of dogs write the stupidest things on Facebook, and when I've got an advice sheet that I send to people who've been involved in a bite incident, and one of the things it clearly says on there is do not post on Facebook. I know in the heat of the moment, we all get upset. We all want to protect our dogs, but I've seen some very inappropriate comments and people slating not just the police, but the victim. And there seems to be an assumption if a child's bitten, the child's done something wrong. That's not the case. I've seen children bitten simply by walking along the street and dogs run up to them and bitten them for no reason. So please, if your dog is involved in an incident, do not post on Facebook. Go and ask me, experts like me, solicitors, speak to people who know what they're talking about, and we will give you some advice. But yes, video, photographs, copies of Facebook posts, All of that has been and can be used as evidence, yes.
That's a good answer. Thank you, Debbie. Are you okay for a few more questions, Debbie?
Yeah.
Lovely,
yeah.
Thank you. So Becky, hi Becky, she says, I have an American bully, which I have learned is a breed commonly at risk of being seized as being Pitbull type by police, and has to be tested. Do you know what this testing involves or how to prevent your dog from being taken? I've seen some upsetting situations where dogs are poorly cared for and fed, etc., and I'm worried that this could happen.
I'll address the last point first. I've been an expert for 6 years. I've worked with dogs for more than 30. I visit kennels, not all of them, because the police won't let experts in some of them, but I visited kennels, and the vast majority of them do a good job. They are private licensed kennels, and they take the responsibility of dogs who may be there for quite some time very seriously. I once arrived at one and found a girl with a bacon sandwich sat outside a kennel because the dog was scared, and she'd taken the bacon sandwich because it smelled nice, and she was trying to entice the dog to come and talk to her. And that dog did come round beautifully. Whether the bacon sandwich was the deciding factor, I'm not sure. So, no, not all kennels are the same. I'm going to be very careful what I say because I'm involved in an incident in a kennel, so I'm going to be cautious about that. But I've seen them as well. I've seen appalling cases with dogs with bits of tails missing, with sores, badly underweight. I've posted, and there's a leaflet I have about seized dogs, which again is available on the My Dog Has Bitten page, and I give that out to owners. The crucial thing here is if a dog comes back that is underweight, is ill, or anything else, get a vet check within 48 hours and come and talk to me. I've currently got files on 4 cases. All are going through complaints procedures with different forces regarding the state of dogs that were returned. And I understand why that worries people. The majority are absolutely fine. But yes, it can and does happen. So what we need is, if we're going to address this, and I've been dealing with this particular topic now for nearly 4 years, and I'm currently in talks with a couple of forces about these issues. In June of this year, I did an 11-page report, and it's gone to the policing minister, to the National Police Chief Council, to the Police and Crime Commissioners Association, and I am pushing that. One of the things in there is to do with the welfare of dogs that have been seized. There are guidelines. If you go and Google, I think there might be a link in the, I don't know if it's in that handout or the other one. There is an online booklet written by the RSPCA, and sadly he's passed away now, but a man who used to be the sergeant of the Met Police Status Dog Unit, and that booklet is the good practice guide for this. And it was given out to all the kennels. I carry copies and I give them to kennels and police officers as a matter of course if they've never seen it or they've read it a long time ago. I give them a copy. So just to address the welfare thing, I'm dealing with this now. I have been for nearly 4 years. I keep pushing this. The report I did earlier this year is being looked at currently by a minister and the police chief council, and I am still pushing that to do something about it. It's a bigger issue than just the welfare. It's other issues to do with good and bad practice within the whole seized dog issue. So I am still dealing with that. Now, to come back to the first part of Kirsty's question, is there anything you can do to stop your dog being seized if it could be tight? No. If the police turn up and say that dog looks to us like it might be a pit bull, it can and will be seized. You could sit in your house with it and never let it out of your property, but that would be ridiculous. And you know, I don't think people realise that sometimes dogs are seized by dog handlers who think it might look like a pit bull, but when the specialist officer comes along, and I've had 2 of these in the last week alone, the dogs were seized potentially as being pit bull type. A dog handler turned up to seize it, not a dog legislation officer, a trained officer, thought it did, and on 2 occasions they've had the dog 2 or 3 days and then sent it home because it's not. So, yes, seizure happens. Yes, they sometimes, when the specialist sees it, say, actually, no, that's not. So don't assume that seizure always means that a dog alleged to be tight actually is still accused of being one. But you can't really stop the dog being seized. That's the law. That's the guidelines that they have to abide by. to ensure that the dog is properly tested. And yes, unfortunately, American Bulldog is not a breed in this country, and a lot of owners of American Bulldogs have had their dogs seized. So I can understand why you're asking the question. Not all of them have typed. There was an incident in Nottinghamshire some months ago where 5 dogs were seized from a property that had 10 or 12 dogs. It was in the newspaper, so it's in the public domain. 5 dogs were seized by several officers and the RSPCA as potentially being type dogs. 3 of them have since been returned. 2 of them are still going through the court process to see if the court agree with the independent expert or the police and whether they are both type. So that happens as well. You can't really stop a dog being seized if they want to have a look at it, though.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. A good question here from Nadine. She says, are signs that say beware of the dog displayed on your property a legal hindrance? I'm
glad this question has come up. Thank you, Nadine. I think people believe, because I've had this happen, that if they put up a sign saying beware, caution, dogs running loose, whatever, and if a person ignores it, that they haven't committed an offence because the person should have abided by whatever sign they've got. Not true at all. The law is clear. If your dog bites somebody, those things are irrelevant. It's also, some of this has become a bit of an old wives' tale, but yes, I've been in court where the prosecution have produced photographs of signs on doors and gates saying beware, caution, or what perhaps could be perceived as being funny, things like I can reach the gate in 0.4 seconds, can you, and things like that. The court takes a dim view of all of that, that's the truth. Is it an admission of liability? It's not really been tested in that way, but have photographs of people's gates and signs been used in court to say this person knew this dog had a problem? Yes. I give everybody the same advice. Put something up. You can get those signs where there's a picture of a dog and it says, I live here. Do something like that. What the courts say, and I think some of this is a fair point. What if it's a child who's not taken any notice? What if they don't see it? What if they don't speak English? What if they can't read and write? This spread takes us on to leads and collars with words on them. And the court takes, in my experience of it, and this has happened, I've had one quite recently with this, the court, the prosecution, you can say if your dog's got a red lead with the word caution on it, you know your dog's dangerous. Why isn't it muzzled? Why isn't it under better control? So signs need to be taken very seriously. I think people, I'm not saying don't have items with words on, but don't assume you're suddenly not liable or you haven't committed an offence. If you're using signs on a dog itself or on your property and somebody takes no notice, you have still committed an offence.
Thank you, Debbie. That's nice and clear. So another comment from Emily. She says, I know the law includes private property as well as public, but if a burglar enters your property and got injured by your dog, are you still liable?
Oh, God. This is the biggest grey area ever. There's some descriptions online of this, and it's almost like the reasonable force argument. If somebody breaks into your house and your dog bites them, they didn't realise the dog was there, they either didn't see the sign or the dog didn't bark until they got in, because that's happened quite a lot. Let's say the person gets into the house, is sneaking around, your dog finds them and bites them. That one is probably defendable. If you see the burglar trying to get into your house, you go to your back door and you see the burglar running away and open the door and let your dog out and the person is bitten trying to leave, you're in trouble. That's the simple version of that. It's about what's happening at the time. Essentially, you can't let your dog out to chase the burglar away deliberately and hope that it bites the burglar. I'm not saying I disagree with the sentiment there, but the idea that the dog can be a guard dog is not true. So each one, and I've had a few of these. I did have one where the charge was dropped. The burglar was bitten. He got into the house without disturbing the dog. But he'd come across the dog, which was startled in the kitchen and bit him. And initially, the owner was interviewed and potentially faced a charge of dog dangerously out of control causing injury. However, when the law was looked at properly, that was dropped because the person was bitten in the house. Nobody knew he was there. Nobody told the dog to do it. They weren't setting the dog on somebody. But there have been one or two where there's been some trouble. I've not had one in court where I've seen a couple that were threatened with court that went nowhere. But you've got to look at, you can't open your door and get the dog to chase the burglar away. That's your job. You need to go out and do that.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. So I think we've answered all the questions. So Debbie, I just want to say a really, really big thank you for giving up your time this afternoon. And anybody watching, if you haven't already, please go onto Debbie's Facebook page and give her a like. The posts on your page are so interesting, Debbie. Just
thank you.
Insight into what you do. It's really fascinating.
Thank you.
I'll encourage anyone to have a look.
The page I put up, I never name anybody. I never name the dogs unless sometimes the owners come along and want to say thank you and name themselves. The thing I respect is there are victims in this, the majority of which have done nothing wrong, were in the wrong place at the wrong time, or there was a problem. Occasionally they've antagonised the dog and done something stupid. That's not a defence really either. I'm not a solicitor. I'm an expert witness. I do in excess of 40 cases in court a year and many more that don't end up in court. I have a reasonably good relationship up and down the country with different dog legislation officers, and I do want to say a quick thank you to those. They know who they are. They will pick up the phone. They will talk to me. We can sometimes come to agreements and not waste so much of the court's time, or in some cases not even need to go to court. They know who they are, and I thank them for their cooperation and professionalism in dealing with a very difficult subject sometimes, where they're accountable to the victim, and never ever forget that. It's why I don't name them on the page. I put the brief outlines up to explain what's happened, because the truth is the vast majority of these could be anybody. It's one moment of what I call a momentary lapse of judgment. You know, I had a call yesterday from somebody whose 3-year-old child was playing with a dog. The child has known this dog all of its life. He left the room to go to the bathroom, heard the scream, came back, dog bitten the child in the face, gone to hospital. And there was no reason to think that was going to happen. What's the lesson? We all surely know you do not leave a dog in a room on its own with a child. But people get away with it and think it's always going to be okay. Kids get bigger, they do more things wrong. And whatever happened, that is likely to end up in court. My page is there to try and show everybody it could be you, because I'd rather you didn't get into trouble. I'd rather your dog didn't bite anybody. These are my interpretations based on my experience within the law. I think I probably deal with more cases than most of the specialist solicitors do in a given year. I'm very busy. Sadly, I get a lot of calls. Some of them go nowhere. Some of them I pick the phone up and speak to the police. And again, I thoroughly thank them for that. But my last thoughts are really, be vigilant, be sensible, report things. If you want advice, come and get it. Come and take the graphics off my page. But please, you know, I'm a dog owner as well. It honestly could be any of us, some of these things. It's a moment looking in the wrong direction. It's taking things for granted. It's a problem that's been developing, and you've kind of gone around it instead of getting help. So please, be sensible, be vigilant, be safe. And in this weird year that we've had in 2020, unfortunately, I've had more inquiries than normal, and I get a lot anyway. So something's going on. We've had kids at home more with dogs. There are a lot more child injuries this year than usual. We're all stressed. We're all upset. The dogs are picking up on that. So please, everybody, stay safe.
Thank you, Debbie. We've just had a lot of people saying thank you and how useful this has been. I know a lot of people are going to watch it on the catch up. What I'll do is afterwards, I'll put in the discussion a link to your page.
Excellent.
And presumably, if anybody needs your help, Debbie, they can message you, and you can.
They can message the page. If you're a victim, I give a lot of advice to victims about how to get justice as well. If you're a victim or you're involved in it in any incident, or you've just got a question, message my page. It's usually me. One of my assistants does assist with answering questions on there. Because I'm busy, but I will try and answer it. I am essentially working over Christmas. I gave up Christmas and holidays many, many years ago. thank you, everybody, for taking time to listen to the questions. Some fantastic questions there. Thank you, everybody. And I wish you all a very happy and safe holiday.
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks again for your time, and have a good Christmas, everybody. And take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.